Man, it's about Fife, and I wasn't prepared to say anything, none of this kind of shit, man. But it's like, Outkast would not be Outkast.
Imagine being so respected in hip-hop that even your silence feels louder than a diss track. That's exactly who André 3000 is. The mystery, the legend, the guy who rarely speaks, barely raps anymore, and yet when he finally opens up, the industry listens. But what if I told you that behind that calm, flute-playing genius was a list of names he never forgot, not because they inspired him, but because they crossed the line? These aren't fan theories or anonymous rumors. These are the artists that André 3000 was disappointed by, hurt by, or just straight up done with. And the names? You won't believe who made the list. And just when you think this story couldn't get more uncomfortable, it absolutely does. Let's start with number 1, Drake. This one, it hurt on a different level. In 2021, André 3000 was invited to appear on a track called Life of the Party, a deeply emotional piece that was supposed to be a tribute to his late mother. He poured his soul into that verse, reminiscing on life and the fragile beauty of memory. It wasn't rap for clout, it was therapy on a beat. But behind the scenes, something unexpected happened. The version that leaked wasn't what André expected. Instead of a heartfelt homage, it turned into a battlefield. Kanye West, who'd invited André onto the song, laced it with subliminal disses aimed directly at Drake after André had already submitted his verse. But the surprise didn't end there. Drake, in an act of retaliation against Kanye, leaked the track during his OVO Sound radio episode.
And Drake released it on his radio show. Like, he just put it out. And I was like, whoa.
And with it, he leaked André's most personal bars without his prior knowledge or permission. André further responded with a rare public statement explaining, "It's unfortunate that it was released in this way. It was never meant to be a diss track. I wanted to work with people that inspire me." He didn't blame Drake directly. He didn't accuse anyone of wrongdoing. But fans and industry insiders couldn't help but speculate, was André upset with Drake for putting the song out like that? Was he caught in a crossfire he wanted no part of? Some fans argued that while Drake didn't diss André with words, the act of using his grief-laced verse in a feud felt careless. Others believed André stayed neutral, simply disappointed by how something so personal turned into hip-hop drama. There's no proof that André harbors ill will toward Drake, but the moment left a mark not just on the song, but on the community watching it all unfold. It raised questions about consent, about boundaries, about when artistry becomes collateral. Whether or not André felt betrayed by Drake remains unclear. What's clear is that the entire situation struck a chord with fans. It didn't look like beef, it looked like sadness. And for someone who values intention and purity in music, that kind of moment, intentional or not, might be hard to forget. It's not beef in the traditional sense, it's something colder, more personal, and much harder to forgive. Which brings us to number 2, Kanye West. If Drake's move raised questions, Kanye's involvement sparked even more speculation. The collaboration between Kanye West and André 3000 on Life of the Party was pitched as something pure, heartfelt tribute to their late mothers. André, always selective about his features, agreed and delivered a verse that was deeply vulnerable. He opened up about his grief, addressed Kanye's mother directly, and poured raw emotion into every line. It was poetry, not performance. But after André sent in his verse, Kanye allegedly added subliminal disses aimed at Drake without informing André. When the track later leaked, it was Drake who released it, but the drama originated with Ye. Suddenly, what was meant to be a healing moment became a weapon in one of the biggest rap feuds of the decade. André responded with public disappointment, saying in a statement, "It's unfortunate that it was released in this way. It was never meant to be a diss track. I wanted to work with people that inspire me." That line was neutral, but it said enough. Fans and hip-hop insiders began speculating that André felt manipulated by Kanye. He had signed up for something sacred and, instead, his art was dragged into chaos. Some pointed to Ye's history of stirring drama Taylor Swift, Kid Cudi, even his public falling outs with collaborators as a pattern that seemed to repeat. In a follow-up interview, André used a metaphor that struck a chord with fans. He compared what happened to crashing a funeral. It's like going and up your mom's funeral. While it wasn't framed as a direct accusation, the imagery painted a clear picture. Fans interpreted it as André expressing that his sacred expression of grief had been overshadowed by ego and spectacle. There's no evidence of direct animositino diss tracks, no verbal jabs. But the tension? It was felt. For someone like André 3000, who rarely makes public appearances and chooses his collaborations with deep intention, this entire incident likely reinforced why he stays away from the spotlight. To many fans, it felt like Kanye had taken something intimate and turned it into a headline. And that kind of betrayal, intentional or not, sticks with someone like André. In the end, whether it was a calculated move by Ye or just another chaotic twist in his artistic journey, the damage was done. And for André, who was seeking something real in a moment of vulnerability, the fallout may have confirmed what he feared most about the industry. Sometimes even healing gets hijacked. Next is number 3, Future, another Atlanta giant. On the surface, Future and André 3000 seem worlds apart. One embodies introspective lyricism and artistic solitude. The other, an unapologetic trap wave of hedonism, codeine-soaked hooks, and relentless hustle. Yet they share something that runs deep: Atlanta roots and generational influence. In the 2019 Netflix documentary The Art of Organized Noise, André spoke about Future with real admiration. He said he and his son are Future fanatics, and that Future makes the most negative inspirational music ever. That statement wasn't meant to clown, it was praise, laced with empathy. André added, "There's a certain pain behind what he's doing." That's high praise coming from a man who rarely hands it out. It showed that 3 Stacks saw something real beneath the codeine metaphors and auto-tune, a voice of trauma, despair, and survival. But what did Future do with that respect? Not much. When asked how he felt about André's comments, Future replied, "He don't even talk to people, so for him to talk about me in an interview, I felt that." It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't warm either. It sounded like he was caught off guard, maybe even suspicious of the compliment, like he didn't quite know what to do with it. Then came the real shift. In a later interview, Future threw shade that felt more pointed. "Nobody is dressing like André 3000 anymore. We on some real shit now." On its own, that sounds like Future pushing his brand new wave, new style. But within the context of Atlanta's hip-hop lineage, that line hit different. It wasn't just fashion, it was a declaration that the ATL André helped shape was no longer relevant. A signal that Future and his generation were building something new, with or without him. For André, who built the foundation of ATL's creative freedom, that kind of comment wasn't just a critique, it felt like a slap in the face. He was one of the first to make it cool to be different in Atlanta, to rap in costumes, to wear wigs, kilts, and boas, to rap about love, pain, and aliens instead of just and money. So in Future, the modern-day king of trap, casually brushed him off as outdated, that wasn't just disrespect, it was erasure. There's no diss track between them, no beef on wax, just a Momenta cold shoulder in public that said more than 1,000 bars. And for someone like André 3000, who thrives on soul and connection, that kind of cultural amnesia cuts deep. And now number 4, Young Thug. If Future's comments stung, Young Thug's words felt like a full-blown punch to the gut. In 2020, during an interview with T.I. on the Expeditiously podcast, Thug shocked fans by saying, "I can't rap 2 André 3000 songs. I ain't never paid attention to him. Never in my life." That line alone lit a match. But Thug didn't stop there. He followed it up with something even more jarring. "Elton John likes to kiss. André likes his kissed." Translation: Thug was accusing André of being arrogant, off sitting on a pedestal, unreachable, too elite to collaborate or show love to the younger Atlanta wave. He implied that trying to work with 30 Stacks meant navigating layers of managers, red tape, and egos. For ATL fans, this felt personal. Outrage hit the internet fast and loud. One fan wrote, "This is such a weird beef. Thug sounds bitter." Twitter chimed in too, with one tweet reading, "Imagine dissing a man who made Hey Ya and disappeared like a ninja." The reactions weren't just about defending André's legacy. They were about the disrespect towards someone who laid the foundation for Atlanta's creative freedom. Fans weren't having it. Thug's words sparked a divide. Some younger fans sided with Thug, arguing that André hadn't embraced the new generation. Others said Thug's comments only exposed his insecurity, that maybe he felt snubbed by someone he grew up watching from afar. What's wild is that André had actually shown support for Thug in the past. He once said in an interview that he thought Thug was unpredictable in the best way, someone who pushed boundaries, much like Outkast once did. But for whatever reason, that mutual respect never turned into collaboration. André never clapped back. No tweets, no interviews, just silence. And that silence, it spoke volumes. Because sometimes not responding is the real mic drop. It's worth noting that just a year later, Thug appeared to soften. He hinted in another interview that he still respected 3K, but by then the damage had already been done. The words were out there. The moment was burned into memory. André 3000 has never been the type to chase beefs, but when people throw rocks at his legacy, he doesn't flinch. He simply steps aside and lets the culture decide who's really standing on solid ground. Moving on to number 5, Lil Wayne. This wasn't a diss track situation or tabloid blow-up, it was something sadder, a quiet heartbreak that echoed through years of near misses and unmet hopes. For more than a decade, Lil Wayne praised André 3000 as one of his biggest inspirations. In interview after interview, he mentioned how much he wanted to collaborate with him. Fans dreamed about it, the blogs asked about it, but nothing ever materialized. In a 2011 MTV interview, Wayne said, "I love André. I reached out, I've tried, but I guess he's just in his own world." That quote was honest but gentle, respectful. You could hear the disappointment, but Wayne still kept it classy. But behind the scenes, word was that André didn't connect with Wayne's subject matter, the non-stop output, the laced punchlines, the chaotic energy. For a rapper who once said he didn't want to rap past 40 unless he had something meaningful to say, Wayne's prolific style might have felt like noise to André. As the years passed, the disappointment didn't fade. On an episode of Young Money Radio, Wayne reflected on a quote he'd once read from a rapper he respected. He said, "I read a depressing quote from someone I respect. They said, 'I'm 40, what am I gonna rap about?' I was like, that's so depressing. I got everything to talk about." He didn't name names, but fans speculated he was talking about André, and that's when it clicked. This wasn't just a one-sided letdown. Wayne wanted to connect, but André perhaps had already disconnected from the industry, from the spotlight, from rappers who didn't speak his language. The timing, the energy, the vision, it just never aligned. In many ways, this broken connection mirrored the bigger issue André's fans have noticed for years. He's too different for a genre obsessed with conformity, too poetic for radio, too reclusive for features. And that quiet gap between him and Wayne, it represents something bigger, a generational rift. Two goats in their own right, just never walking the same path at the same time. Wayne kept creating mixtapes, albums, tours. He never stopped. André kept retreating, waiting for something to feel authentic again. It's not animosity, it's not beef, but it's still a tragedy. Because sometimes the saddest stories in hip-hop aren't the ones with diss tracks or public meltdowns. They're the ones where greatness misses greatness by inch of sand, no one knows why. Number 6 is a little different, the Drake versus Kendrick feud. Because this time, it wasn't even about André. Not directly, but it still broke his heart. In 2024, Kendrick Lamar and Drake stepped into the ring for what many now call one of the most intense rap feuds of all time. The bars, ruthless. The shots, personal. Family members got dragged. Secret recordings surfaced. Nothing was off limits. Fans were thrilled. The internet was on fire. But behind all that noise, André 3000 was watching and wincing. He broke his silence in a rare interview with Crack Magazine saying, "I got a little sad at a certain point. In early rap battles, you had kids in the park rapping against each other. But it's not just people rapping now. You've got people with 100 employees. Livelihoods, empires, companies, deals, all of it can be jeopardized." To most people, that sounded like wisdom. To André, it sounded like grief. He wasn't criticizing Kendrick or Drake directly, was lamenting what the art form had become. Once a tool for expression, now a high-stakes corporate blood sport. And even when Kendrick gave him a shout-out on the song Like That rapping, if he walks around with that stick, it ain't André 3K. André responded with what seemed like gratitude. As a 49-year-old rapper, you're just happy to get a shout out. But underneath the smile was something heavier. Because André's style, his voice, his soul, it doesn't fit in this new world of strategic leaks, diss rollout calendars, and billion-dollar brand wars. He once represented everything weird, poetic, and free about rap. Now, that energy feels like an artifact. André has always stood apart, both elevated and isolated. But seeing the Kendrick-Drake war explode, watching the fans treat it like a pay-per-view fight instead of a cultural reckoning, hit something deep. He wasn't upset at the artistry. Both Kendrick and Drake delivered lyrical warfare at its peak. But the collateral damage, the fear that no line is sacred anymore, that's what haunted him. Because for André, rap isn't supposed to be about destroying your opponent. It's about elevating the craft. And when the game starts to feel more like a demolition derby than a cypher in the park, you start wondering if you even belong in the arena. So no, André never entered that beef. He didn't pick a side. He didn't drop a verse. But the war still hit him. Not as a competitor, but as a fan who still remembers what it used to be. He felt like an alien in his own genre. And the worst part? He probably always has. Finally, number 7, Benzino. This one goes back to the moment André 3000 found his voice and had to fight to be heard. It was 1995. Outkast had just won Best New Artist at the Source Awards, but instead of applause, they were met with boos. A wave of rejection from an audience dominated by East Coast purists who saw Southern rap as second class. The tension in the room was thick. The industry elites didn't believe the South belonged in the same conversation as New York or LA. And then André stepped up to the mic. No bravado, no bars, just one sentence that changed everything. The South got something to say. That wasn't just a clapback, it was a declaration, a prophecy. And in that moment, André 3000 became a voice for an entire region. But behind that tension was a man pulling strings, Benzino. At the time, he was closely tied to the Source magazine and had serious influence over how hip-hop narratives were shaped. Years later, in a rare admission on The Go Show, Benzino finally confessed, "I was the one who kinda raised some situations up at the Source. I didn't understand the music, and I was wrong." That apology came decades too late. Because that night at the Source Awards, it wasn't just an awkward award show moment. It was a cultural wound. A moment that made André and the entire South feel like outsiders in their own genre. For André, who had always used music as a way to explore identity and challenge stereotypes, that public rejection cut deep. He didn't respond with a diss track. He didn't start a campaign. He let that one line echo, and it still does, nearly 30 years later. What makes Benzino's inclusion on this list so powerful is that it wasn't personal beef, it was institutional. Benzino represented an entire era that tried to gatekeep rap, that tried to silence Southern voices. And when he finally admitted his role in that, it only proved how valid André's quiet fury had been all along. André 3000 didn't come for revenge. He came with evolution. His success in Outkast's rise forced the game to grow. And Benzino's resistance only sharpened André's defiance. That speech, that night, wasn't just the beginning of Outkast's dominance, it was the beginning of the South's takeover. So when we talk about enemies or disappointments in André's story, Benzino might be the most symbolic of all. Because he wasn't just a man, he was a wall. And André didn't climb over it. He made the wall irrelevant. No diss, no drama, just legacy. André 3000 never needed a shout. He never needed to beef. But when you look at this list, Drake, Kanye, Future, Thug, Wayne, even the entire system that allowed the Source to ignore him, you start to see a pattern. André remembers everything. He may disappear, he may float away on a jazz flute, but he never forgets. So now we ask you, were these just quiet heartbreaks? Or did hip-hop waste one of its greatest minds? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because if this is who he revealed, imagine the names he never said. And remember, in hip-hop silence, that's the loudest diss of all.